Do you remember the snacks that made the 80s unforgettable? In this video, we're diving into 20 classic snacks of the 1980s. From gooey chocolate bars to quirky lunchbox treats, these are the flavors that defined a generation. Stick around, you might just rediscover a few forgotten favorites. Big League Chew. Big League Chew was more than just gum. It was the snack equivalent of dreaming big under the summer sun. In the 80s, every kid who tore open that iconic pouch felt like they were moments away from being called up to the majors. The shredded gum, meant to mimic chewing tobacco, gave it an edge. It felt rebellious and cool, but safe. You didn't just chew it. You loaded up your cheek like a slugger stepping up to bat. It was the taste of dugouts, scraped knees, and the satisfying thwack of a backyard baseball hitting a fence. The grape flavor was electric, bubblegum was nostalgic, and both were perfect for blowing bubbles so big they'd smack back into your face during recess. Behind the fun was a wholesome origin. Two ball players wanted to give kids a fun, safe alternative to a very adult habit, and boy, did they hit a home run. Even today, Big League Chew brings back the scent of fresh mowed grass and the feel of a sun-warmed baseball mitt in your hand. You could spot the cool kids at recess by the purple or pink stains on their cheeks and the bulge of gum in their mouth. There was something powerful about a snack that made you feel like you belonged on a team, even if the only field you played on was the schoolyard gravel. And let's not forget the sound of that pouch tearing open. It meant game time, every time. Fun fact, Big League Chew was originally made in a barn in Oregon before hitting store shelves. And by 1980, just a year after its debut, it sold over $18 million worth of gum, proof that kids everywhere were ready to chew like champions. Jell-O pudding pops. Remember the thrill of cracking open the freezer and spotting a Jell-O pudding pop waiting just for you? On a scorching summer day in the 80s, nothing hit the spot like one of those creamy, frozen sticks of happiness. They weren't just a dessert. They were a rite of passage for every kid with chocolate-streaked cheeks and sunburned shoulders. Wrapped in their bright, cheerful packaging, each pudding pop felt like a tiny treasure earned after hours of backyard games and bike rides. What made them special wasn't just the taste. It was the texture. Silky and custard-like, these pops melted slowly, leaving behind a rich, nostalgic sweetness. You had chocolate for the deep, fudgy lovers, vanilla for the classic hearts, and swirled for the indecisive ones who wanted it all. Eating one meant sticky fingers, big smiles, and probably a race with the sun to keep it from dripping onto your sneakers. Jell-O pudding pops weren't just popular because they tasted great. They were a cultural moment. Thanks to a string of light-hearted commercials starring a beloved comedian, these pops became a fun staple in every household freezer. At one point, they were so in demand that they outsold even ice cream bars in certain regions across the U.S. Interestingly, the creamy texture came from a patented freezing process developed by General Foods that allowed the pudding to hold its shape while still remaining smooth. Despite their eventual disappearance from shelves, the love for Jell-O pudding pops never faded. And they've become one of the most requested snack revivals in nostalgia forums and fan petitions. Fruit Wrinkles. Fruit Wrinkles were like edible treasures tucked into every 80s kid's lunchbox. Unlike the slick, uniform fruit snacks we see today, these little gems embraced their wrinkles, literally. They looked like tiny, shrunken fruits pulled from Grandma's pantry, each one packed with sticky sweetness and bursting with flavors like strawberry, cherry, and grape. They clung to your fingers like they didn't want to let go, turning snack time into a delightful mess. Opening a pack was a small thrill. You never just grabbed one. They had that homemade, nostalgic charm that made them feel like a secret treat made just for you. Parents loved that they were marketed as real fruit, giving them a pass as a healthy option. But kids didn't care. They just knew Fruit Wrinkles were downright delicious. Created by General Mills, the same genius minds behind Fruit Roll-Ups, Fruit Wrinkles were part of a bold move to redefine fruity snacks. But while roll-ups soared, wrinkles quietly vanished in the early 90s, leaving behind sticky fingers, sweet memories, and a cult following of nostalgic snack lovers who still wish they could find a pack today. Some collectors have even posted unopened boxes online, treating them like vintage toys rather than food. And rumor has it, some passionate fans have tried to recreate them at home, proving just how missed these chewy little bites really are. Hubba Bubba Bubble Gum. Hubba Bubba was the chewy thrill every kid chased after school, a thick, flavorful burst that made every bubble feel like a victory lap around the sandbox. You didn't just chew it, you lived it. Thick, rectangular slabs wrapped in bright, crinkly foil, each one packed with flavors that hit you the second you peeled it open. The original bubble gum was a classic, sure, but if you got your hands on grape or watermelon, that was snack time royalty. The magic was in the bubbles, massive, balloon-like bursts that sometimes popped right onto your face, leaving your cheeks sticky and your friends laughing. Blowing the biggest bubble wasn't just fun. It was an after-school sport, a badge of honor that crowned the bubble king or queen of the block. You knew it was special the moment you caught that fruity scent. Loud, juicy, unforgettable, and it lasted. While other gums fizzled out in seconds, Hubba Bubba stuck around, making recess sweeter and bike rides more fun. And then there were the commercials. Wild, wacky, and full of attitude, they made the gum feel larger than life, like chewing it gave you superpowers. Whether you were trading pieces under the desk or daring your best friend to out-bubble you, Hubba Bubba was more than gum. It was a chewy slice of 80s magic. Planters cheese balls. Planters cheese balls were the bright orange crown jewel of after-school snacking. One pop, and you were hooked on their cheesy, melt-in-your-mouth magic. Housed in that iconic blue canister, they carried a certain kind of joy you could spot from across the kitchen. Just the sound of the plastic lid popping off was enough to draw the whole family to the living room. One whiff of that tangy, bold cheese scent, and suddenly, everyone wanted in. The texture was almost magical, light and airy, but with just enough crunch to satisfy. Each bite seemed to melt on your tongue while leaving behind a glorious layer of bright orange dust that marked your fingers like a badge of honor. Napkins were optional. Licking your fingers was part of the ritual. These weren't just cheese snacks. They were sharper, more flavorful, more alive than anything else in the snack aisle. For many of us, a can of cheese balls signaled the beginning of something great. A sleepover, a Saturday morning cartoon binge, or a road trip where half the fun was sneaking snacks in the back seat. You'd try to beat your own record for how many you could fit in your mouth, and someone always ended up with orange fingerprints on the remote control. Even though they vanished from shelves for a time, when they finally made a comeback, fans were ready. Because let's face it, nothing else quite nails that perfect blend of nostalgia, crunch, and that unbeatable cheesy punch like Planters cheese balls. Dunkaroos. Dunkaroos turned snack time into a sweet little adventure, half cookie, half frosting, and all excitement in one playful package. Opening up a pack felt like uncovering buried treasure. On one side, those crunchy mini cookies just waiting to be dipped. On the other, a pool of smooth, sweet frosting practically begging you to dive in. And the best part? You were the boss. There was something magical about that frosting, especially the vanilla with rainbow sprinkles. It wasn't just sweet, it was electric. It made you feel like every lunch break could end in a mini birthday party. At school, Dunkaroos were pure currency. You could trade them for almost anything. A juice box, a pudding cup, maybe even a comic book page if your timing was right. And if you were lucky enough to have a fresh pack, you held lunchtime power. Dunkaroos quietly vanished in the early 2000s, breaking the hearts of an entire generation. But anyone who ever scraped that last bit of frosting with a fingertip knows they were more than a snack. They were a sugary symbol of childhood freedom, joy, and the delicious art of dunking on your own terms. Bonkers candy. Bonkers candy was one of those treats that came out of nowhere, literally and figuratively. You'd open that colorful wrapper, expecting the usual chewy sweet, but instead, bam! you'd get hit with a juicy, fruity center that practically exploded in your mouth. Each square was a bright little burst of fun, with flavors like grape, strawberry, and watermelon that tasted like summertime wrapped in tinfoil. Kids didn't just eat Bonkers, they experienced them. That chewy outer layer gave way to a shock of flavor so strong it could make your eyes widen and your friends jealous. And the commercials? Pure chaotic genius. Who could forget those giant fruits crashing from the sky, bonking unsuspecting people on the head? It was candy advertising at its most cartoonish, and it worked. We were hooked. And there was always the challenge. Could you make it last? Or would you pop one after another until the whole pack was gone before the bus even arrived? It wasn't just the candy. It was the joy of surprise in every bite. And even though they vanished from shelves, anyone who grew up with Bonkers still remembers that wild, fruity bonk like it just happened yesterday. High C Ecto Cooler. High C Ecto Cooler was the kind of drink that made lunchtime feel like a sci-fi adventure, zany, electric, and totally unforgettable. For kids in the 80s, cracking one open felt like stepping into a Saturday morning cartoon. Released as a tie-in for the Ghostbusters franchise, Ecto Cooler instantly stood out with its electric green color and that unmistakable tangy citrus flavor that somehow managed to be both weird and wonderful. The box featured Slimer, the gooey green ghost from the movies, grinning at you like a mischievous buddy cheering you on at lunch. And for kids who worshipped the Ghostbusters, drinking Ecto Cooler felt like a membership card to the coolest club in school. It wasn't just about the flavor. It was the vibe, the packaging, and the joy of showing it off in the lunchroom. Some kids even swore it gave them Slimer powers on the playground. Even after the Ghostbusters craze settled, Ecto Cooler stuck around, because it had become more than a marketing gimmick. It was a part of growing up. When it was finally discontinued, fans were crushed. But those who remember, they know Ecto Cooler wasn't just a drink. It was a sugary badge of childhood, a green-tinted memory of the days when lunch came with a side of magic. Whatchamacallit. Whatchamacallit was the candy bar that made you stop and say, "Wait, what is this?" With its quirky name and unexpected combo of crispy, chewy, and chocolatey, it felt like a delicious puzzle you solved with every bite. This quirky bar was like nothing else on the candy aisle. It combined crispy rice, gooey caramel, and a silky milk chocolate coating, stacking textures in a way that made each bite feel like a small adventure. You'd bite in and get that sweet snap of chocolate, then the stretchy caramel would follow, pulling slightly before giving way to the satisfying crunch of the rice center. It was a layered experience. Kids would unwrap it slowly, almost ceremoniously, savoring each layer like a mini science experiment for your taste buds. The commercials added to the charm, playing up its wacky name with catchy jingles and playful humor that made you remember it, even if you didn't quite know what it was. If your friend pulled one out of their lunchbox, you'd hear "whatchamacallit," and everyone would laugh. For those of us who remember, it wasn't just about the flavor. It was the thrill of picking something offbeat, a little weird, and wonderfully fun. Keebler Magic Middles. Keebler Magic Middles felt like a secret treat only you knew about. Plain on the outside, but hiding a gooey burst of chocolate or caramel in the center that made every bite a little adventure. On the outside, they looked like your average shortbread cookie, nothing flashy. But the magic happened when you took that first bite and discovered the warm, gooey pocket of chocolate or caramel hidden inside. It felt like finding treasure where you least expected it. The crumbly, buttery shell paired perfectly with the molten center, making every bite a layered experience, soft, rich, and just indulgent enough to feel like a reward. For kids in the 80s and 90s, these cookies were often the grand finale of lunch. You'd trade almost anything to get one, but if you had one in your own lunchbox, you'd guard it like gold until the very last bite. What made Magic Middles so memorable wasn't just the taste, but the experience. It was a snack that delivered surprise, comfort, and a little joy in every bite. They felt elevated, like a treat you weren't quite supposed to have on a weekday. Despite their popularity, Keebler quietly pulled them off shelves, turning them into one of those rare snacks we all wish would make a comeback. And let's be honest, breaking one open just to show your friends the molten middle was half the fun. Squeeze It. Squeeze It wasn't just a drink, it was a full-blown experience wrapped in a wild, colorful bottle. For any kid in the 80s and 90s, cracking open one of those twist-top plastic bottles felt like unlocking a secret weapon of fun. These weren't your average juice boxes. They were shaped like tiny rocket ships ready to blast fruity goodness into your day. Each squeeze brought a squirt of cherry berry or tropical punch, so bright and bold it could have doubled as art supplies. The colors were loud, the flavors louder, and squeezing every drop felt like a little victory after recess. You didn't just drink it, you aimed it like a squirt gun, tilted your head back, and felt the cool hit of childhood. Lunchrooms turned into trade markets, with kids bartering bottles like currency. Some wanted the red one because it tasted faster. Others swore the blue one made you run faster. The best part? That pop sound when the cap came off. It signaled the start of something fun. Though Squeeze It eventually vanished from shelves, it never left our hearts. For those who remember, it wasn't just juice. It was a flash of neon nostalgia, a symbol of simpler times when flavor, fun, and friendship all came in one little plastic bottle. Waffle Crisp cereal. Breakfast in the 90s had its share of heroes, and Waffle Crisp was one of the greats. Every golden bite looked like a tiny waffle, and the moment you opened the box, that warm maple scent would wrap around you like a cozy blanket. It didn't matter if you were still in pajamas or racing to catch the bus. One spoonful, and you were transported to a diner booth with syrup on your chin, and nothing but time. What really set Waffle Crisp apart was its crunch, the kind that stood up proudly in milk, never soggy, always crisp. Kids knew to savor those few minutes of perfect texture before the softening set in. And that syrupy sweetness? It made breakfast feel like a treat instead of a chore. The box often sat proudly on the kitchen counter, with cartoon waffle characters practically winking at you to pour a second bowl. And if you ever snuck a handful dry while watching Saturday morning cartoons, you knew the real magic wasn't just in the taste, it was in the moment. Though it's vanished from shelves, Waffle Crisp still lives on in memory. For those who grew up with it, it was more than cereal. It was a golden, crunchy reason to get out of bed. Nestlé Quick Strawberry Powder. Before flavored milk came in cartons, we made our own magic. And Nestlé Quick Strawberry Powder was the star of the show. You'd grab a cold glass of milk, open the canister, and watch that vibrant powder cloud rise as you poured in a few heaping spoonfuls. Stirring until the swirls disappeared into a smooth pink glow wasn't just a step, it was part of the magic. The flavor was pure strawberry candy, sweet, playful, and just the right kind of artificial to feel like a treat. Some kids would go overboard, creating a sugar bomb so intense it could make your eyes water, while others carefully measured the perfect pink-to-milk ratio like mini kitchen scientists. The moment that sweet smell hit your nose, you knew you were about to sip something special. It wasn't just a drink. It was the finishing touch to an after-school snack, or a way to make an ordinary day feel a little brighter. You might have even licked the spoon or snuck a dry taste of powder just for fun. And let's be honest, if you left a little ring of pink around the glass, that was proof you did it right. While it's still around in some spots, it's not the pantry staple it once was. But to those who remember, Nestlé Quick Strawberry will always be the pink milk that made everything feel a little more magical. Hostess Choco Bliss. Back in the 80s, if there was one snack that could instantly upgrade your whole day, it was Hostess Choco Bliss. For kids in the 80s, pulling one out of your lunchbox felt like you had hit the dessert jackpot. 2 thick layers of rich, fudgy cake hugged a creamy chocolate center, all crowned with a velvety layer of frosting that looked and tasted like it belonged on a birthday cake. The moment you bit in, everything else faded. the cafeteria noise, the math homework waiting at home. It was just you and that pure, gooey indulgence. Unlike the typical cream-filled treats from Hostess, Choco Bliss skipped the frills and went all in on chocolate. It was dense, it was sweet, and it melted just enough in your fingers to leave a little evidence of your afternoon escape. Parents might have packed it to make lunch special, but for kids, it was more than a treat. It was a celebration in a wrapper. It had a way of making an ordinary Tuesday feel like a mini holiday. Even now, just the name Choco Bliss can trigger a wave of sweet, fudgy nostalgia that takes you straight back to simpler times. Sadly, Choco Bliss disappeared from shelves, but for those who remember, its rich chocolate layers still live on as one of the most indulgent bites of childhood nostalgia. Oreo Big Stuff. There was a time in the 80s when cookies weren't just snacks, they were statements, and none made a bigger one than the Oreo Big Stuff. This wasn't your ordinary Oreo. It was a giant two-handed version that turned snack time into a full-blown dessert experience. It came individually wrapped like a gift from the cookie gods, and opening one felt like unwrapping a personal cake. The filling inside was everything you loved about a regular Oreo, but amped up. More cream, more crunch, and way more satisfaction. Kids had their own strategies. Some twisted it open to savor the middle, while others chomped into it like a challenge. You didn't just eat an Oreo Big Stuff, you conquered it. It was the kind of after-school treat that made you feel like the coolest kid on the block. And yes, sometimes your fingers ended up sticky and your face dusted with cookie crumbs, but that was part of the joy. Parents might have thought it was a bit much, but to kids, it was the perfect symbol of go big or go home snacking. Whether shared with a friend or saved all for yourself, Oreo Big Stuff was more than just a cookie. It was a sweet moment of victory. And for a brief, chocolatey minute, it made you feel like the world revolved around your snack. Bar none. If you were lucky enough to snag a bar none in the late 80s, you probably remember it as the chocolate bar that made all the others seem, well, kind of boring. Made by Hershey's, it wasn't just candy, it was a full-blown chocolate experience stacked with layers of crispy wafers, velvety chocolate filling, and a thick coat of smooth milk chocolate, finished with just a hint of crushed peanuts for that little extra crunch. Opening the wrapper felt like unsealing something premium, something meant for someone with good taste. It was dense, rich, and unapologetically chocolatey, like it had skipped the gimmicks and gone straight for cocoa glory. While other bars added caramel or nougat, Bar None doubled down on chocolate, earning its place as the go-to choice for those who didn't just like chocolate, they craved it. It felt indulgent, like the kind of treat you'd save for last in your lunchbox or savor after school with zero distractions. And that satisfying crunch, followed by creamy smoothness, pure perfection. Sadly, Bar None vanished from shelves in the mid-90s, but for those who remember, it wasn't just a candy bar. It was the crown jewel of chocolate lovers everywhere. Even now, just hearing the name is enough to trigger a craving and a flood of chocolate-covered memories. Carnation breakfast bars. Before breakfast bars were everywhere, there was one that ruled the morning hustle, the Carnation breakfast bar. For kids in the 80s, it was the holy grail of grab-and-go breakfasts, something you could unwrap and devour on the way to the bus stop without missing a beat. It felt like a sweet little rebellion against cold cereal or toast, and somehow it still managed to convince parents it was nutritious. Wrapped in shiny foil, it came in flavors like chocolate chip and peanut butter, simple, familiar, and comforting. The texture had a little grit from oats and grains, but that only made it feel heartier, like a candy bar with a conscience. You could toss it into a backpack, unwrap it during homeroom, and feel like you had your life together, even if your socks didn't match. What made it extra special was how grown-up it felt. It wasn't kiddie cereal or a fruit roll, it was a real breakfast, the kind you'd imagine busy adults eating in commercials. And for kids trying to feel just a little more independent, that was everything. Though it quietly vanished from shelves, the Carnation Breakfast Bar remains a beloved memory for anyone who ever sprinted out the door with one in hand, and a reminder that sometimes breakfast really can taste like freedom. Marathon Bar. The Marathon Bar was a slow-burn adventure for every kid who believed bigger meant better. With its braided caramel core wrapped in smooth milk chocolate, this beast of a bar stretched nearly 8 inches long, making it one of the most distinct and satisfying snacks in the candy aisle. It didn't care about being polished or quick to eat. This was candy you had to work for, chew by chewy, gooey bite. The red wrapper even came with a ruler printed on it, almost daring you to pace yourself or measure your willpower. For kids in the 80s, it wasn't just a treat. It was a time trial, a delicious race against your own cravings. You'd start nibbling at recess and still have a chunk left by lunch if you played your cards right. It was the kind of candy you shared only if you really liked someone or wanted to impress them with your snack game. Every bite felt like a reward, especially after scraping together change from under couch cushions or begging for a quarter at the corner store. Marathon bars vanished before the 90s hit full swing, but for those who remember, it wasn't just a sweet treat. It was a stretch of childhood fun that truly lived up to its name. Even today, just thinking about that stretchy, sticky caramel can bring back the thrill of making a candy bar last longer than recess itself. PB Max. PB Max was a peanut butter lover's dream in full, chocolate-drenched glory. Imagine tearing into a wrapper and finding a thick slab of creamy peanut butter sitting proudly on a cookie base, all hugged by rich milk chocolate and sprinkled with crunchy oats. It didn't mess around. Each bite was bold, rich, and unapologetically satisfying, like dessert turned up to 11. The Max in PB Max wasn't just for show. This bar was packed to the edge with peanut butter. So much so, it felt like the candy was bursting with it. You'd get that first satisfying snap of the chocolate, followed by the soft crumble of the cookie, and then the peanut butter. Oh, that peanut butter. Smooth, nutty, and just the right amount of salty to make the whole thing addictive. It wasn't a candy you mindlessly snacked on. It was one you savored, maybe even split in half to make it last, though, let's be honest, most of us didn't. Kids traded them like treasure at lunch, and adults secretly stashed them in drawers for an afternoon pick-me-up. Strangely, PB Max disappeared in the early 90s, not because people stopped loving it, but allegedly because the Mars family didn't like peanut butter, a heartbreaking twist for fans who still crave that perfect cookie chocolate peanut butter trifecta. To this day, PB Max is the what-if candy. What if it had stuck around? What if we could taste that peanut butter-packed bite just one more time? For those who remember, it wasn't just a snack. It was the gold standard of peanut butter bliss. Giggles cookies. Giggles cookies were more than just something sweet. They were little bites of joy that made snack time feel like playtime. Shaped like smiley faces, these cookies turned every lunchbox into a mini comedy show. With goofy grins and silly expressions, they didn't just feed your stomach, they cracked you up before the first bite. Structurally, they resembled Oreos, but with a twist. Inside each cookie was a double layer of creamy goodness, half vanilla, half chocolate. That combo gave you the best of both worlds, and every kid had their favorite way to eat them. Some would carefully twist them apart to get a taste of each cream layer solo, while others chomped down straight away, enjoying the blend of flavors all at once. They became a favorite for school lunches, not just because they were tasty, but because they were fun to share, show off, and swap. You could tell who had giggles just by the grin they wore after opening their lunchbox. They were the kind of treat that made you the hero of the cafeteria table. Eventually, Giggles cookies vanished from shelves, leaving behind a trail of nostalgia and sweet memories. But for those who remember, they weren't just cookies. They were little edible smiles that made growing up just a bit more cheerful. Thanks for joining us on this delicious journey through the 80s, a time when snacks weren't just food, They were moments. From the gooey goodness of Jell-O pudding pops to the playful grins of Giggles cookies, these treats brought joy to lunchboxes, after-school hangouts, and every corner store visit. Each one carried its own little story, wrapped in crinkly packaging and bursting with flavors we still crave today. What was your favorite 80s snack? Was it a candy bar you'd trade anything for, or a lunchbox treat you still dream about? Share your memories in the comments. We'd love to hear which snack takes you back. If this trip down memory lane brought a smile to your face, give us a like, subscribe to The America We Remember, and tap the bell so you'll never miss another taste of the past. Let's keep those sweet memories alive, one nostalgic bite at a time.